the last statistic that came out was 27% of adult children do not have a relationship with at least one parent. And that number is growing significantly. And it's scary to me because it's setting a cultural precedence for the future. Our children do what we do, not what we say. And if they see us cut off our parents, that will give them permission and license when they find themselves in a tough place 20 years later to cut off their parents, because that's what the definition of normal was in that family. And so I don't think adult children fully understand the implications of the choice to cut off. And I think we have created a culture that doesn't have resiliency to be able to have hard conversations. And so that's something that in a family, so, for those who are listening, who have children who are still at home, learn how to have the conversations while they're still at home.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about parenting adult children. I'm delighted to welcome Catherine Hickem. Catherine is an author, psychotherapist, and founder of Parenting Adult Children Today. You can learn more about Catherine at her website, parentingadultchildrentoday.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Catherine. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate the heart that you have and understanding why this is such an important topic.
Thank you. And this is an important topic. And we had a quick little chat before we got started about how wonderful it is that we have experts in parenting, and each stage of parenting can bring its own challenges. Like, you're a new mom. Oh my gosh, so many challenges. And then you have little toddlers, and that's a whole new ball field. And then when you get kids in school, that's new. And when they turn teens, that's a whole new thing. And not a lot of people are talking about the challenges that come when our children become adults. And we can become estranged from our children if we're not doing things right. My husband and I were having a conversation with a friend, a very successful doctor, and he's retired. He's now 80. He has 2 children. Neither of them will speak to him. And it's heartbreaking to me. And I don't want to be in that position, and I want to be able to help people prevent it if possible and heal it if it's a situation. So help us, Catherine.
Unfortunately, what you just said is become a chronic condition. And, the last statistic that came out was 27% of adult children do not have a relationship with at least one parent. And that number is growing significantly. And it's scary to me because it's setting a cultural precedence for the future. Our children do what we do, not what we say. And if they see us cut off our parents, that will give them permission and license when they find themselves in a tough place 20 years later to cut off their parents, because that's what the definition of normal was in that family. And so I don't think adult children fully understand the implications of the choice to cut off. And I think we have created a culture that doesn't have resiliency to be able to have hard conversations. And so that's something that in a family, so, for those who are listening, who have children who are still at home, learn how to have the hard conversations while they're still at home. That means we need to be able to agree to disagree. We need to be able to know, how can we disagree in a respectful manner? Can we really be great listeners? And stay really curious and seek understanding from another person's perspective. These are basic communication tools that every family needs to practice. But in the day and age of social media and the screen, we have really negated a person's ability to communicate and articulate their feelings, their thoughts, in a manner that's in complete and whole sentences and paragraphs. And so we're seeing the side effects of what happens when we are cutting and pasting conversations instead of really talking with each other, instead of at each other. And so, it's sad. It's very sad. I hear painful stories every single day of parents who have not heard from their children in decades, years. and who may live right next door to them, but the family will not let them see the grandchildren, and the children are forbidden from coming over to grandma and grandpa's house. The pain is so intense, Linda. I just can't even begin to tell you the amount of pain that's out there, and it just breaks my heart because I understand that there are some cases that have to do with severe abuse, and that level of it would not be safe for another human being to be with a person. I understand that. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about differences. We're talking about, different perspectives, different stands, different values, different political positions, different religious places. But differences should never trump the love and the relationship. We need to learn how to we love each other in spite of our differences. We need to learn how to come alongside each other and care for each other in the midst of being different. But that's not happening in an increasing number of families where things are breaking down and communication is stopping and the caring is going away. And it's really sad.
That is sad and so painful. The
Very.
thing that matters most to me are my family, my children, my grandchildren. And if I were in a situation where I'm not allowed to see them, oh, my heart would break every day. That's a weight that's too too heavy for anyone to carry. And I appreciate that you made a distinction that there are some cases where there's a safety issue, maybe if some past abuse, and that's not what we're talking about. Here we're talking about their safety physically, but maybe not emotionally,
Right.
where we're different. And
Hmm.
I don't know. When we're on social media, we have the opportunity, if we disagree with someone, you can blast off something and then walk away, or you can turn it off and choose to associate only with people who think like you think, believe like you believe. And in families, we have no guarantee that that's going to be that way. Different people have different ideas. So, this skill, which is lacking in our whole world, it's a problem everywhere. But today we're talking about how this problem is so close to home.
Hmm.
We need these skills.
Absolutely. We need to prioritize these skills. And when we don't, what happens is that everybody just shuts down, pulls away, and then you have everybody walking on eggshells, or you have everybody keeping everything a surface level. So it's not a real relationship. It's a check the box relationship is what I call it. And that doesn't satisfy that really deep longing of your soul to be connected to the very people that you have loved with every ounce of your being. That doesn't mean you've always done it great. It doesn't mean you haven't had bad times. It doesn't mean that you haven't made mistakes. We all have. We're a part of the human race. We have our faults, our flaws, but how do we come alongside and overcome, and how do we talk about what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to have boundaries? What does it mean to be able to be heard and seen and known? And that's what I think we haven't figured out how to do as a culture, which is a reason why there's more walls and there are bridges. And not okay. Just not okay. You
Yeah.
know, I tell this story. My daughter was home from college for the summer. It was her junior year, and one of her friends had driven down from the northern part of the state and was having lunch with us. And Tiffany had left the room to go somewhere for a few minutes. And her friend Jason looked at me and he said, Mrs. Hickem, did you know that Tiffany is the only friend that I have that is the same in front of her parents as she is behind their back? And I said, no, no, Jason, I didn't know that. I said, what about you? I said, are you the same? And he said, oh, no, Miss Hickem, absolutely not. And I said, well, what is that about? And he said, I know what my parents expect of me. And he said, if I don't live up to their expectations, my mom cries and my dad gets mad. So I've just figured out when I'm with them, I become who they want me to be. And when I walk out the door, I go back to being myself. And it just really hit my heart. This was a really great young man, a really sweet boy. And I was so sad for him. And I started getting really curious. And I started talking to a lot of other adults, young adults, asking the question, say, are you the same? And they would go, oh, absolutely not. Nope, I'm not. And without exception, they would go, I know who they want me to be. And if I tell them I'm not who they want me to be, I'm going to have to deal with the repercussions of that, and I don't want to deal with that. And the less I tell them, the better it is. And I'm not that with them. I'm with them not that often anymore. So I just let them think what they want to think. But at the end of the day, I live my life, and they don't really know who I am.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
when you look at the stats that say 53% of all adult children will not discuss their mental health problems with their parents. Well, then who did those 53% discuss them with? If a young adult or an adult child of any kind is having a mental health crisis and they can't talk to their parents, who are they going to go to? And what's the fear of being able to say, I'm really struggling. I'm really having a hard time, or this is the battle I'm fighting right now. And what has happened to where we can't talk to each other and we can't be vulnerable with each other and feel safe with the people who brought us into the world are going to love us through wherever whatever it is we're going through. See, this to me is a significant problem in our culture because if you can't feel safe at home, then where do you go to feel safe?
If you can't feel safe at home, where do you go to feel safe? And for some people, the answer is nowhere. And
Right,
there's so much loneliness and isolation.
right. And this is
Wow.
why you look at the volume of addictive behaviors, you look at the volume of, suicide attempts. Um, when you look at the percentage of mental illness, when you put all those pieces of data together, we are a culture in trouble. And I go back that it starts at home. And we as parents have to realize we have work to do. We have work to do. We have work to do when they are with us. Are we raising them for their GPA, their performance on a field or in a theater? Or are we raising them to be people of character, heart, and faith, where they have something that comes from the inside out instead of the outside in?
Oh, and we know what it should be. And yet we're all a work in progress. So let's say I'm starting from where I am today and
Yeah.
and I'm having this conversation and I'm realizing I need to make some changes. So how as a parent, should we start as a teen or should we start as someone who's left home where
Let's go with a team. Let's
okay,
let's
a
let's
teen
start with
because there's a different role of a parent of a child who is a minor versus a child who is an adult. But it does matter. We're setting the stage now for what's going to be. I have expectations, and maybe my child is not meeting those expectations. Is there a way that I can maintain my expectations and my rules without causing a rift?
Yeah, I think the real question is if they're your expectations, well, it's what about their expectations?
Ooh, excellent question. Okay, so I have different expectations than my child does. I guess first I need to find out what their expectations are,
Right.
and I need to
And
be a safe place to listen to that.
yeah, and it may be that they don't have the confidence in themselves that you have in them. Or maybe the expectations that you have are about your unmet needs and not about theirs.
That happens more frequently than we realize. As you were
Yes.
mentioning some of the things that we're expecting of our children, like the GPA or the success or the status of something, sometimes it is, I want my children to be perfect so that I can say that I raised my children perfectly. And it's not even about them, it's about me.
That's
That's
exactly.
not okay.
Yeah, but that is an incredibly common occurrence because if a parent's getting their self-worth based upon how their child turns out, then we got a problem because it's no longer about the child, it's about how that parent feels about the job they're doing. And that GPA is a reflection of them being a good parent, or them being a great athlete is a reflection of them, quote, getting accolades in an area that maybe they didn't succeed in. So it comes down to whose expectations are these? There is nothing wrong with us being committed to excellence. Nothing wrong, right? But when we raise children from the inside out, where they know who they are and they're valuable, not and it's not related to a performance issue, then we're going to have children whose confidence is going to be like ingrained in the core of their soul, not just what happens if they get out here and let's say they've been a star athlete in their senior year and they have a life-changing injury and they can't play that sport anymore. Well, where are they going to get their self-worth? If it hasn't been built on who they are, their heart, their character, the substance of what makes them uniquely them, their identity is a person, then they're in trouble. Because now the very thing that they've spent their entire, quote, life shooting to have and be is gone. Now, who do they become? And you see, we've got to really help them recognize their value is so much bigger than their GPA or their performance. Who they are is enough. And if they know that, then they're going to figure out how to deal with life, whatever is thrown at them. Because their value is not up for negotiation, because they know that they're enough. And
If
that
we could instill this message in everyone, in our children, and in ourselves, wouldn't that just change everything?
it would change everything, Linda. I am telling you, it would change everything. But remember, as parents, how do we get our value? Because over 70% of parents of adult children say they are responsible for their children's successes or failures.
When their children are adults, they still feel that way?
Yes, they still feel that way. So now this is one of the reasons why they have such a vested interest in how they succeed, because their self-worth is still tied to how their children show up. And part of my messaging is you're not responsible for their lives anymore. You're not responsible for their successes, and you're not responsible for their failures. And if you take credit for all their successes, you have to take credit for all their failures. It's an all or nothing deal. And it's not fair to them or to you to own the choices that they're making as adults. It's just not, it's not reasonable in any way, shape, or form. But if your self-worth is tied to how your children succeed, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And I want to release parents from that, because it's not even accurate, true, or real. We have to let them live their lives and make the choices that they make. And their choices should not affect the fact that we love them. Our love for them cannot be tied to their performance, achievement, and behavior. But let me tell you, most of the adult children that I deal with totally believe that love is not conditional. Even though the parents think it is, they do not believe it is unconditional.
Okay. So, unconditional love means, and we're just going to go to make something that's obvious and yet sometimes needs to be said out loud, means that my love for my child does not depend on their GPA, their success, their even their some of their choices, like who they vote for, what religion they attend, things that can be deeply important to us. That's not what our love is based on.
Can't be. If it's going to be unconditional, it means I'm going to love you in spite of whatever choice you ever make. And most parents say it, but when push comes to shove and it gets tested, we actually see what's true.
Yeah,
Right.
true.
And I have had many clients in therapy when I've asked the question, have you shared this trauma, or have you shared, the consequences of this with your parents? Absolutely not. And when I would ask why, they would say, because it'll change my relationship with them. They would judge me. It, they would no longer trust me. It would bring shame upon the family. Um, and I can't risk facing the truth that I may have to face, that I would no longer be welcomed.
Those are some pretty strong reasons not to talk.
Yeah. And those are all comments I have heard consistently as a clinician, as a coach, as a family coach for 40
Okay.
years.
And it's so easy to do this wrong. Um, and we have to, anytime we're talking about any sort of relationship, the knee jerk, what we desire is I do what I want and you do what I want. And that doesn't work. And the reality is, in any relationship, the person that I have the power to work on is me.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's frustrating. It's like, how come I have to do all the changing? How come I have to be the one that's the
Right.
adult in this situation?
Yeah. That's right. It's very frustrating because and I think, because we are older, right? As parents, we've lived longer, we've got more bumps, bruises, and scars, and we don't want those things for them. We love them. We don't want them to have to learn things the hard way. But you know what? It's also the way they grow, right? It's like we grow more in our moments of pain than we grow in our moments of joy. And if we constantly rescue them from having to learn and take advantage of those opportunities, we're actually hurting them. One of the things I used to say, for many years, I focused on parenting under 18. And I would say to parents, especially when they were dealing with adolescents, I would say to them, the minute you get angry with your teenager, is that minute the opportunity for them to learn from their mistake is lost, because it goes from the focus being on the mistake and the lesson they needed to learn into managing you and your emotion about their mistake, because
Wow.
they're going to be more focused on calming you down and managing the relationship so it doesn't permanently damage the connection that you have than it has to do with any of the lessons that they needed to learn because of something they did that was probably stupid.
Okay. So I need to manage me. I need to manage my emotions so that we can talk on the issue that's actually at hand.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that parents make under 18, and it's like, and I would ask parents, well, what about this makes you mad? Like, help me understand, like, why are we getting angry? They made a choice. It's your job to carry out the consequence or the benefit. So what's the problem here? And they would go, I don't know. It's like, because they didn't listen. It's like, okay, so they didn't listen, but what is still, help me understand why that makes you mad. And they would go, well, they should listen. It's like, again, help me understand why you're mad about this. And they really couldn't articulate it. They couldn't really give me reasons except for the fact that they, quote, should have listened. And it's like, okay, but they didn't listen. And now what's your fear? Tell me what you're scared of. And I would immediately go to the fear, because every time we're angry, we're scared. And whether we are dealing with adolescents or whether we're dealing with kids who've gone away to college or where we're dealing with adult children who have children of their own, anytime we get angry, we are actually scared. And our first question has to be, what's the driving fear that's causing me to feel this? Am I scared that they're going to pull the grandchildren away and I won't get to see them again? Am I scared that they have misinterpreted my intentions? Like, get to the root of the fear. If you can get to the root of the fear, you can then solve the problem far more effectively. But most of the time, because we don't talk and we ignore or we minimize or we think, oh, it'll blow over, we just allow more and more things to pile up and pile up and pile up to the point where now we have a superficial relationship. I don't want a superficial relationship with the people I raised.
No, neither
No,
do I.
that's not an option in my home. We're going to keep it very real. And sometimes that may mean we have to have, conversations we weren't expecting to have. But you know what? I also believe we can get through whatever conversation we're going to have because we love each other and we're going to be respectful and we're going to listen and we're going to seek to understand.
Ooh, seek to understand. That seems like a good place to begin.
Huge. It's huge.
Okay. Hmm. And that's going to require more listening than speaking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a believer that adult children need some key things from us. One, they need for us to be respectful. That is a huge element in a parent adult child relationship. And if we keep parenting them and talking to them like we did when they were adolescents, we will lose them. Because it says we're not taking them seriously. And when we don't take them seriously, they're going to stop talking to us about their lives. Another area that we need to really pay attention to is that we need to know who they are, not who we want them to be, not who we thought they were going to be, but who are they really? How do we know them? How do we really know them? Which then leads me to the third pillar, which is how do we accept them? What does acceptance look like in their world and in their life? And then the last one is how do they know I love them unconditionally? What evidence do they have that I love them unconditionally? Show me a parent who can answer yes to those four questions with their adult children, and I'll show you somebody who has a good relationship with their adult children.
Oh, that's beautiful. So let's go back to step 3 where it's accept them. So now we're trying to be respectful. I'm trying to see you as an adult. You're not the little kid that I was changing diapers. Now you are your own person, separate from me. And as I get to know you, I find out, or maybe have a deeper realization, we are different. We think differently. So, does acceptance mean, what does acceptance mean to you? What do you want from me that makes you feel like I'm accepting, or what does that look like?
That's the question that's on the table for every family, right? Um, Acceptance to me personally, with my own children, means I'm going to accept that you and I may not look alike, think alike, be alike, but that doesn't mean I can't be respectful. I can't see the value that you bring to the world, that I can't appreciate your talents, your perspective, your curiosity, your challenges, the way approach life. I can find all kinds of things to show that I value you, regardless of our differences in perspective. And that you matter. You matter to me. You matter to the world. You matter to the world that you're in. And you have something to offer. And I get the privilege of being in your presence while you get a chance to offer the world who you are.
Okay, that's beautiful. And as you were describing that level of acceptance, you gave some examples of how you were showing the fourth step, which is how do they know that I love you? How do you know that I love you? And that was I value you and I value what you bring to the world. So they're interconnected in maybe the how, the nuts and bolts of what is acceptance going to look like for us.
Mm-hmm. And I think and what I'll tell you is they know when we genuinely accept them.
They know. They just know.
They know in the deepest part of their DNA that it is real and it is sincere. And and when we can be that kind of a parent to them, it's a magnetic pull of safety, like it was when they were, remember when they were little and we would have them on our chest and they would just melt into us and they would just fall asleep on our chest. And their little bodies were lifeless. They were just as if they were reattaching themselves to us. They were so connected because they were safe. It that same degree of safety that happened in that moment can happen today if we will be the healthiest version of ourselves and love them for who they really are and not all the other trappings that the world says we have to, quote, place on them. I just had this experience with my daughter. She went through a miscarriage. So it was
Mm.
her first pregnancy, and she's older. She's 40. And we've been fighting for her fertility since she was 16. She's just had incredible challenges with her health and all kinds of things. And so this was a miracle that she had gotten pregnant, and then to lose it, of course, you can just imagine how devastating it is. So she had to go to the hospital and have the procedure done. And we got home from the hospital, and, I had taken off the time to go and be with her. And so as we got home and I made sure she was fine, I said, and I said, what can I do? I said, how can I help? What is it that you need that you've not had time to do? And she looked at me and she said, Mom, you don't need to do anything. Your presence is all I needed. You are enough. And I don't need you to do. You just being is the very thing that heals my heart.
That's beautiful. That brings tears to my eyes. I'm so sorry for her struggles, but what a compliment to you that your being is enough.
And
We are supposed to be human beings,
yeah,
but a lot of times we're human doings.
yeah. And that you captured it, but that's the gift that we as parents can give when we're willing to, quote, get real clarity on what we have to offer. And the very best gift that we give them is the healthiest version of ourselves. That's where they started. They started with us. And when we're healthy, we are comfortable in our own skin. We're grounded in who we are. We don't have to get out here and be loud and make noise and prove anything. Our presence will be enough. And that's what they long for. They long to be safe in the presence, literally, of the very arms that they started in. And it may look different emotionally, but it doesn't look different emotionally, if that makes any sense. It's like it's a heart thing that they long to be connected to, but they have to feel safe. And they can't feel safe if we have our expectations and if we have our judgment and if we can't love unconditionally because our value is tied up in how something looks instead of who people are. And this is the conversation, Linda, we need to be having with parents because we're missing the boat. We're missing the opportunity. And I'm not saying all parents are this way. Let me be really clear. I'm not blaming anybody. But what I am saying is we have not, as a culture, done a great job of helping parents understand the differences in parenting in this last season of our journey with them. It could be probably one of the most important seasons that we ever have if we're willing to step back, breathe, and really recognize the greatest gift that we can give them is that the healthiest version of us.
And the responsibility is on us. I
Yeah.
don't get to fix my kids. I need to work on myself. Now, let's go back to the story that I shared at the beginning. Let's say we have a situation where our kids aren't talking to us. Is it game over, or are there some steps we can take to reconnect?
I'm a big believer that we don't ever write the end of the story because I have seen too many times where restoration has taken place in a family. And if a parent is working on themselves, then I can tell you the shift of possibilities of healings change greatly. And now I'm also going to say, we do have a percentage of young adult children who find themselves with mental health crises or addictions that can really skew their ability to see any changes that their parents may be making. And so we have to, quote, recognize that some of these moments may take longer because of the pain that's in the family. But what I've noticed is when parents start to really get focused on what they can do and the power they have to, quote, grow and evolve and change and heal, it's amazing that word gets out to that adult child that something has shifted, and how those moments start to reappear. In fact, I just had one this week where I got an email. She said there had been estrangement, and the daughter had said, "The closer you come to me, the further I'm going to push you away." I mean, it had been brutal. But as this mom had begun to work on herself, on Easter, everybody came that had not come for a while. And this one daughter stayed after everybody left, hung around, and finally decided it was time to go home. And as they were walking out the door, the mom said, "Thank you so much for being a part of today." And the answer was, "Of course, this is where we wanted to be." This mom cried as she was telling me the story because she said, "I never thought it could happen again." All because this mom had put the mirror up and said, "Okay, I got to look at me. I can do something about me. I can work on getting better. I can learn. I can grow. I can change." And, this is one of the reasons why I'm so committed to helping parents, is because I am the byproduct of a father who changed the way he parented me at the age of 25. It really is a defining story. It's the story I open my book with because I wanted people to have context as to what was possible. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, my childhood was hard. It was incredibly hard. And I raised myself, and um, I sought out a guidance counselor in elementary, middle, and high school to go talk to somebody because I had no one to talk to.
Oh,
And then when I went to college, I got into therapy, and I did 4 years of my own personal therapy work. And at 25 is when I sat down with my dad and I said, "I want a relationship with you, and but it can't be the way we've always had it." And he owned it. He took responsibility, and he said, "I can't undo what I've done, but I can only promise you that moving forward, it will be different." And it was. And I will forever be grateful for the hard times and for the amazing ones, because it made me who I am. And I like myself. I'm really grateful for all the pain that I endured, because I learned to let it work for me and not let it work against me. And it made me a better parent because of the pain that I had experienced. So I'm the byproduct of redemption and restoration. And I want that for other parents. I want them to know it's not too late. In fact, that's the name of the book that's coming. I wrote a book that's coming out in August, and it's called "It's Never Too Late to Be a Great Parent." And but my hope and heart is to be able to help parents seize their moments while they have them, because I really believe that every child, no matter how old they are, longs to know that they are deeply loved by the people who brought them here.
I agree.
I've just seen men in their 60s weep with the question of, how come I wasn't enough to be loved by my parents? And when you are still looking for that blessing in the mid 60s, that just says how organically deep that acceptance is for all of us.
Absolutely.
It's because it's the core of why I do what I do every single day. And I see it. I see people changing. I see relationships healing. I see laughter returning. I see hugs coming back. I see these things every single day. So I know it's possible. And I've seen some pretty bad stories. But I've also seen some amazing reunifications. So as long as there's people who are willing to look in the mirror and grow and change, I'm going to be right there with them. I will get in that boat and paddle with them if they think they need to go across the sea.
Thank you. That is a beautiful message of hope that it's not too late. And it's not too late if we are an adult child who would like to reconnect with their parent. And it's not too late if you are the parent of adult children. Whichever role we are in, we have some power to do something about the relationship by working on ourselves and looking in that mirror. So, Catherine, thank you for who you are and what you do and this beautiful message of hope. Is there anything else you want to make sure we cover before we close today?
Relationships at the end of the day, when all is said and done, when we get to the end of our lives, the regrets that people have to do with relationships. And I don't want to have those regrets. I want to know that I have lived as fully as I could to be the very healthiest version of myself. So that way I can leave a legacy that'll be worth repeating. And I believe people have that capacity if they're just willing to be teachable and to grow and to lock arms with people who also are flawed and broken, because we're all in it together.
Thank you, Catherine. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Andy Andrews. He said, "Remember, the goal is not to raise great kids. It's to raise kids who become great adults." Today, I invite parents of adult children to love and accept them as great adults. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.